Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished professional from California, USA, Dr. Tamraz Najjar. Dr. Najjar, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Eve is the co-founder and chief scientist of Sensio Air. She is the Secretary General of the Observatory of Handicap and Sensory or Intellectual Deficiency. And given the kind of work that she has been doing, she's been recognized, felicitated, and awarded several times. So, Eve, let me start by asking you about your own journey. You seem to have had an absolutely amazing journey. Tell me about your journey.
So I'm initially trained as a biochemist.
Mm-hmm.
I specialized in toxicology, health and environment, but also in drug design.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of pivoted or got more interested in neurosciences. And I did my PhD at the École Normale Supérieure de Paris.
Mm-hmm.
And I studied the development of the parasympathetic ganglia that are involved in Undine syndrome, which is when newborns fall asleep but have trouble breathing, so never wake up. And we kind of proved how these ganglia had an effect on it. And just at the end of my PhD, I met Sensio Najjar, who is the co-founder of the startup that we launched then, that specializes in airborne pathogen identification. And since then, I've been the co-founder and the chief scientist of this startup that we are now scaling in California.
Fabulous. So tell me a little bit about Sensio Air.
So Sensio Air started because both Cyril and myself have allergy and asthma, and we could not find anything on the market that could really tell us what's in the air, only the amount of dust, but no technology could really identify the particles. So me being a scientist and Cyril being an industrial designer, we joined forces, and after 4 or 5 years of R&D, we built a sensor that's able to identify floating particles in the air and tell you if it's mold, dust mites, animal dander, etc. And it's linked to a mobile app where you can log your symptoms. And the app learns what you react to, so it can guide you towards having a healthier home, a healthier environment, with really small lifestyle changes to kind of focus on prevention rather than allergy treatment.
Very interesting. And I guess lung-related problems are widespread all over the world. But you mentioned that you've launched in California. Will you be able to take it globally?
So we actually started in the UK. The headquarters is in London. And then for scaling, for talking to clients, investors, it made sense to move to Silicon Valley. But our clients are really worldwide. So we work closely with Europe, with Japan, Thailand. So yeah, the idea is really to help as many people as possible, because right now it's 30% of the world's population who has at least one airborne allergy, and it's just going to keep growing.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, when I was reading about you, your website states that Sensio Air is the only patented pathogen tracker that can help you determine the difference between mold, dust mites, pollen, and dander. Now, for my viewers and listeners, help me understand each of these, and how does your device or your technology help? Yeah.
So right now, the basic technology on the market measures house dust by size. So it can tell you if it's large particle, we call them PM10, so particulate matter of a size 10 micron, or PM2.5, but you have no idea exactly what it is. We built the sensor that is based on purely optical technology that can read the biosignature of the floating particle and differentiate it between those categories that you stated. So pollen usually comes from plants. You can distinguish between tree, grass, and wheat pollen. These are the most allergenic during spring. You can also detect dust mites, which are tiny little insects that live in beds or like curtains, cushions, etc. These cause yearly allergies. We can detect mold that can also be caused by condensations, etc. And animal dander, which are the cat and dog epithelium and hair. So really based on your environment, we can tell you when those levels are too high and are at risk of causing respiratory issues.
Wonderful. And how do I, as someone who is facing an issue with one of these, determine which of these particles is not good for me in my air?
So right now, how it's done is that you would go to a doctor. They would either do a skin prick test. It's where they put like tiny dots of allergens, prick it, and then wait for you to have a reaction, or a blood test. But these are really specific because they know what they're looking for. So they test like 5 types of pollen, 2 types of dander, etc. The advantage of the sensor is that it reads continuously every 20 minutes. And when you log your symptoms, an algorithm matches your symptom with what's in the air. So over time, it will really learn what you react to, but also the levels. So I'm very allergic to grass pollen, and very low level can trigger my allergies. Other people have a higher tolerance. So the app kind of gives personalized and tailored recommendation based on your sensitivities.
Wow. Wow. So what I'm hearing you say is that not only can you determine what I am allergic to, but you can also determine what the air around me has so that I can take, curative action.
Yeah, absolutely. So our main purpose is to understand the air. We haven't gone yet into FDA approval, etc., for diagnosis. So we don't use the word diagnosis, but we do match your symptoms to the environment to give you this kind of insight. But we won't call it diagnosis just yet.
I understand. I take back that word. I fully understand. FDA compliance is very, very critical.
Yeah. Hard to get.
Absolutely. So tell me, there are lots of similar devices which talk about being able to determine air quality sensing. How are you different?
Absolutely. So people are getting more and more aware about the air quality, especially after the pandemic. But right now, the only way for you to really identify the particles and classify them is to have a professional come to your house, take an air sample, go back to the lab and do the analysis and send you the results. The other real-time technologies only do dust classification by size. So our technology is really the first that's able to give this identification in a continuous way with no consumables at a very, very low cost.
Interesting. So now let me ask you a slightly different question. We spoke about mold, dust mites, pollen, and dander. Is our world classified in a manner that geographically some of the countries have greater challenges than the others?
Yeah. So pollen is geographical. So based on the vegetation and environment, you'll find different kind of pollens in different regions. But what is interesting is that for dust mites and molds, the hotter and the more humid it gets, the more dust mite and mold proliferation you'll have. So usually Middle Eastern countries, Southeast Asian countries have higher levels of dust mites and mold.
Okay. And there is also the whole question of air pollution. For example, New Delhi, which is where I live, is considered to be one of the most polluted cities, air polluted cities in the world. Yeah. Can Sensio Air also detect what is in the air and how it can help people who are being impacted with the air?
Absolutely. We started by focusing on allergens, but right now we're kind of extending the database of particles that can be identified. So we're looking at soot, fly ash, sand, and many other pollutants that we can find. But our true focus is on particles. When we talk about air pollution, there is also the whole side of the gas pollution, carbon monoxide, NOx, etc. These are sensors that we actually buy off the shelf and we integrate in our sensing device. But I want to say it's not our core expertise, because really particles is what we focus on.
Very interesting. And Do you think this whole challenge that the world is facing of climate change, is this something that also impacts health of people?
Yeah. Concerning allergies, with climate change and the rise of temperatures, we can see that spring is starting earlier, and then the hotter seasons are lasting longer. So allergy season is longer. It used to start in May. It now starts much earlier. It used to end in September. We now see it going through November. So this is definitely something that is impacting people who have allergic rhinitis on a day-to-day basis. And I don't see it improving anytime soon because the seasons are really getting hotter and longer for that.
And you said because of heat, we probably have more of these dust mites and mold.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And when you look at the US on its, as a single country, do you see big changes across different states, across different temperature zones?
Yes, absolutely. Temperature and humidity is what will really decide on the amount of allergens, but also wind and like vegetation distribution. So in the desert, you see less pollen allergens, but you do see more dust mites who love the heat. And it also depends on the habits of the citizens. So when it gets colder in the winter, in some regions, you tend to keep the windows and door closed longer. So allergens build up in the homes. There's less ventilation. Humidity builds up also in the home. So the seasonality, the temperatures, but also the habits of different regions will have a great impact on your indoor air quality.
And my next question to you, Eve, is that when someone is unwell, because of some of these four polluters, if I can use that term, or allergies, is it primarily the impact that we see on our lungs, or does it affect any other part of our body as well?
Yeah, there are a very wide range of symptoms. So it can go from itchy eyes, runny nose, itchy throat, wheezing, sneezing, and also general fatigue. You can also have symptoms that are non-respiratory, like eczema, itchy skin. It really depends on how you react and how much you're exposed to it, but it can have like debilitating effects on your daily life. So reduces productivity, impairs sleep. It's something that is actually quantified. Approximately 14 days of work are missed by a person who have respiratory allergies because of indoor airborne allergens.
And does it impact young and old alike, babies, very old people?
We actually see an increase of allergies in younger generations, and we don't really know why. So there are two school of thinking. The first one says that it's because we are now very clean, the environment is almost sterile, so young children are not exposed to many pathogen and allergens. And this way, whenever they are exposed to something, the body doesn't know how to react and consider it as an allergy. And the other way of thinking is that it's because of the outdoor airborne pollution that actually constantly causes inflammation of the lungs. And then every time you're exposed to an additional allergen, you'll have flare-ups more often. So it's either because it's too clean or too dirty, but we don't really know what it is.
Yeah, well, a lot of us in New Delhi often say our lungs are so used to so much pollution that when we go into very clear and very good air, we find it difficult to breathe. But that's on a lighter note. We're just so used to so much pollution. But my next question to you, Eve, is that, we've got, say, in our home, multiple air purifiers sitting in different rooms, which obviously must be purifying the air well. But when the entire home and the entire city is polluted, then what does one do? Can something like this really handle the challenges of being okay or safe in one room and not being able to handle it in the second room?
It's an excellent question. Air purifiers really do work, and they have a an amazing effect at filtering most of the large pathogen and particles. The only downfall is that you have to change the filter often, and I think none of us do it as frequently as it should be done. What I personally recommend is that you have a filter where you spend most of your time, which is near your bed and near your desk or your usual workstation. And this already covers, let's say, 16 hours a day. And then the other, the rest of your day, you're going to have to be exposed to allergen and pollution. You can't completely avoid it. But if you can create a healthy environment where you spend most of your time, I think it's already a very good step forward. But change your filter.
Change the filter. I agree. There's another aspect that you also speak about, which is an agri-tech option, where you say that you can protect crops from mold and cross-pollination. Now, that is a completely different kind of an audience that you're looking at, from human beings to crops. Tell me a little bit more about this option.
Yeah, this one was a surprise for us as a business perspective. So we really started focus on the health and wellness approach. And we got contacted by large agriculture corporation. First of all, they want to protect their crop because once it's caught and stored, there's approximately a 10% loss because of mold. So rotting in the warehouse during transit, etc. And Sensio Air is great because it can actually detect mold spores. So it can be an early alarm system. And the other one that we were actually even more surprised about is in the cannabis industry. So apparently cannabis growers, they are very specific on the type of plant that they want to grow. And they do not like when outdoor pollen cross-pollinate their plants. So they want to install the sensors in their air conditioning unit to make sure they are in a closed circuit and don't let any outdoor pollen come in. So yeah, these are applications that we did not see coming when we started the business, but it works.
Fantastic. And that could be a game changer, I'm sure, for agricultural and farmers across the whole world. But that's amazing. So I really have now time for one more question. And this is for the many, many young people who will be listening. And of course, people of all ages will be listening to our conversation. Based on your own amazing journey as a scientist and someone who's become an entrepreneur, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away based on your own journey and based on what you have created in Sensio Air?
Tough one. I think that my first lesson is do not care about competitors. When we first started the company, I was always looking around at who's doing what. And I realized that nobody's going to build your technology because the work that it takes to build a business and a technology is just too much. And your energy should be focused on building rather than looking around. Number 2 is really don't be discouraged by either negative comments or just rejection in general. It's going to happen a lot, especially in the startup world. But if you have faith in your mission, you can move forward. And my 3rd lesson is that you should have a mission because building a business is very hard. And there are some days where you just don't know why you're here and why you're doing that. And having a mission, a personal one, helps you move forward, continue. And I think that it should be a problem that you need to solve for yourself first. And this is what's going to keep you going.
How wonderful. And on that note, you've and your 3 amazing lessons. Do not care about competitors. Don't be discouraged by rejection or failure. And the 3rd one is, which is so powerful, have a personal mission that drives you, because as every entrepreneur has faced, every day is different. Every day there could be rejections. Every day there could be failure, frustrations, excitement, happiness, etc. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for speaking to me about Sensio Air and all the amazing work your new technology is doing to be able to protect not just human beings, but as we spoke towards the end of our conversation, crops as well. Thank you again and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast. platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.